My daughter has a trust fund because my husband passed away. Well, something I did not expect to happen. My sister, she tried to take it away. I'm 30 female and I'm 34 weeks pregnant with my first child, a girl. I was married to my husband for 5 years, but he passed away when I was only 12 weeks pregnant, after a sudden cancer diagnosis. My late husband came with wealth and had a considerable trust fund set up in the event that we had a child. We've been trying for the better part of 4 years to conceive, so the both of us were overjoyed when I finally fell pregnant. My husband's family never liked me, so when we discovered that he was terminal, he immediately put into place multiple safety measures to ensure that his family would not be able to take the money from me. The only people who can access the money are me and my daughter once she turns 18. There's no legal way for anyone else to access it would be for them to grant permission, which is something that I would never do. I'm an elementary school teacher, so there's no way that I'd be able to support our child and myself without the money he put away. My plan was to invest the money to the best of my ability, using some of it to pay for my financial advisor. I want to be able to raise my daughter comfortably without having to worry about unexpected bills. But I also want her to be able to go to college without taking on an insane amount of student debt. Not sure if this is selfish, but I also want to be able to retire early, as that was something my husband and I always planned to do together. We were going to turn 50 and just go on a cruise around the world, and I want to be able to fulfill that dream for the both of us. Unfortunately, I have a sister, Jen, who's been living with me for the better part of 4 years. Originally, she said to just be staying for a couple weeks until she got an apartment, but she ended up just staying. I was never super close to Jen as a child or an adult, and she was really badly behaved when we were younger, and used to make up lies to get me in trouble with our parents, who always believed her and never took my side. She'd steal my clothes, my makeup, steal money from my purse, and hang around when I was with my friends, trying to steal them from me. Thankfully, in high school, friendships are made by grades and ages, so none of them wanted to be friends with someone 5 years younger. The relationship got better once I graduated and moved out of our family home, and I think it did me a lot of good to get some distance from her, as well as her a lot of good to be the only child in the household. There was still tension when I went back for holidays, but I was used to it by then. 5 years ago, my sister graduated from college. She studied computer science, and she's really good with coding and all that stuff. Once she graduated, she struggled to find a job, and ultimately ended up either having to move home or come live with me. She chose to go back to our parents' house, but by then it was only our dad left, and his health was in serious decline. He was diagnosed with early onset dementia and eventually had to move into an assisted living home. The bills were so much that we had to sell the family home in order to pay for his place there, which meant that Jen was coming to stay with me. She promised that it would be temporary and that she'd find a job and move out as soon as she could, but that turned out to be an empty promise. She said that there's very low demand her job in the line of work, but I know that's not true. She's been here for 4 years now and treats the place like she owns it. Jen and my late husband never got along. He thought that she was lazy and entitled. I privately felt the same, but I felt the need to take care of her as we only had each other. We had no other family members, and I felt that I had a duty as her big sister to take care of her. I think she enjoys not having to work for a living, though it's a heavy burden to support her as well as myself when she makes no contributions. They would often have screaming fights, and I would always end up being the one to separate them. Even after my husband received his diagnosis, she continued to pick fights with him, even up to the point he was laying in a hospital bed. Even then, I did not interject and just allowed it to happen, which is something that I do deeply regret, so for the past 4 years, she's been living in my home. She takes on odd jobs sometimes. She's an artist, and sometimes gets commissioned by her friend to draw portraits of their pets, family members, but largely she's just out of work. Thankfully, the house is paid for, with my name solely on the lease now that my husband's deceased, but I still pay for the water, electricity, Wi-Fi, food, and other household expenses. The money she makes on her paintings is spent on her phone bill and new clothing. She's never offered to go grocery shopping, though to her credit, I never really asked her to do it. Recently, we had a conversation about how once the baby arrived, she'd have to either leave or pitch in to help, because I wouldn't be able to afford to support her anymore. Well, she kinda blew up on me and told me that I would be able to take care of all three of us with the money my husband left me. And she stormed out of the room. I didn't take her very seriously then, and she's always been kind of a drama queen, and I'm used to her outburst. Usually I back down when she starts yelling, but this time I didn't, and I think it surprised her. My husband made me promise that I would not let her bully me or the baby once he's gone, and I'm taking that seriously because I promised. I need to learn to have a backbone for the sake of our little girl. The guilt of allowing her to stomp my husband while he was in his deathbed is not something that I'll soon forget, and I privately worry sometimes that the stress of it may have contributed to his rapid decline. We were told he had 6 months to live, and, well, he didn't even last one. Jen wasn't much help while he was sick either, and she really wasn't providing me much support since he died. I thought that she'd at least try to be caring for a while, but before dropping it and going back to her usual ways. She isn't nurturing by nature, but she does usually try to do what's expected of her most of the time. But no, she didn't even come to the funeral. She hasn't been supportive of the pregnancy either. I've had several miscarriages over the years when we were trying to conceive, and she would always make mean little jokes about my inability to have children. Jen had an abortion when she was 17, and I don't judge her for it. But it hurts to hear her making jokes that she was able to get pregnant when she didn't want to. But I was spending thousands on fertility clinics and still unable to keep a baby. Writing all this, I guess I never realized how badly she really treated me all these years. It always felt like she was just a difficult person, but like I had to put up with her behavior because she's my sister. But putting it all down like this is making me rethink everything. My husband and I have been talking about kicking her out before we were pregnant, but it's always just sort of talking to me. I never thought I'd actually be able to do it. He was big on me standing up for myself, but I never managed to do it while he was alive. Ever since he passed, every little thing Jen does has started to bother me. The way she talks, sneezes, chews, swallows, walks, it's all starting to bug me. At first, I thought it was just to do with grief, and then I thought that it was pregnancy thing. But I think I might just be done with her. She's also becoming quite a bit more pushy with money. Even though we did talk about her making contributions, she never did this when my husband was alive. But she started to ask to borrow money for small things, almost like an allowance. And that's what bothers me the most, because she's always at least paid for her own luxuries and cab rides and stuff. Everything sort of came to climax last night when I sat her down for another conversation. She already looked mad, and she seemed to think that I was going to ask her to move out again. So she was coming into the conversation mad as is. I was excited though, because it felt like I'd come up with a solution that could keep the both of us happy. I asked her if she would like to be the baby's godmother. My plan was that if she was the godmother, she could stay in the house, and I'd be able to support both of us. I'd be able to work longer hours with her help in childcare, and she'd be able to stay without getting a job. She seemed enthusiastic at first, and I was happy, but then she asked for something in return. I was thinking, what else could want other than permission to continue living off me? In my house, not to mention, but she said that if she was going to be working, she deserved a salary. She said that taking care of the baby would prevent her from being able to find a job, so I should give her half of the money my husband left in payment. I was absolutely shocked. Honestly, I didn't think that she'd say that in a million years, and I nearly laughed in her face, but I was still trying to be a good sister. I said that the money that my husband left for me was for the baby, and allowing her to live here rent-free and eat my food and live off my bills were payment enough. She just looked at me like I was dumb and told me that if she was going to take on the responsibility of being my kid's grandmother, then she deserved something real in return. She said the pressure was too much, and she'd only do it if she was compensated. She said I'd never supported her, and she deserved to have some fun in her life before she was shackled to a baby she didn't even want. I laughed in her face, which really is super out of character for me. I never usually laugh at people, but it was just such a stupid request. I repeated slowly what I should before, explaining that she's been living off me for so long. I didn't owe her anything whatsoever. Her face went absolutely blank, and when I stayed firm, it was spooky. She didn't even yell, which was the worst part, and I'm used to her always screaming. She's been pitching fits and having tantrums since she was born, but this dead silence was sort of eerie. I was afraid of her for the first time in my life, and reminded that we were all alone in the house together, and I didn't have my husband to have my back. She just told me to think about it and left the room. I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong now, and she didn't even yell. She was calm, level-headed, and I was the one getting emotional, not her. It's a big responsibility to be a godparent, and I didn't really think about the toll on her before I asked. She's hinted over the past few months that the only reason she's still here is to support me in my grief. Maybe she really does feel trapped here because of my needs. Anyways, responses would be greatly appreciated. I've spoken to a few of my friends about this, but I can never really tell if they're just being loyal or if they really think that I'm in the right. Anyways, thanks for reading, guys. I look forward to hearing from you all. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. So this story's about to get pretty wild. There's a few updates to get through, so we're going to hop into the first one. I hope you guys are having a great day. Here's your update. This post kind of blew up, which I really did not expect. So I just wanted to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart. I really did need the validation that I wasn't being a monster, and that the pregnancy brain is really messing with me. So it really helps to get an outside perspective. A lot of you guys were super straightforward with me, telling me that I'm the problem. And it hurt to read at first, but I think you guys have a point. I'm the one who allowed Jin's entitlement to grow this big by babying her when she moved in. If I'd acted like a sister from the start instead of a maid, we wouldn't be having this problem. Honestly, she's probably just would have moved out a lot sooner. So I've decided to rescind my invitation. So my sister is not going to be my daughter's godmother. I spoke to my best friend about it, and she helped me see that, even if my sister had not asked for money, I wouldn't be happy with her taking care of my child. My sister doesn't have a nurturing bone in her body, and it would end up becoming heck on earth for both her and the baby if she had to take on the role of a parent. She's flaky, and she can be mean. I don't want my baby to have to raise herself while also taking care of her guardian. It's a heavy burden to put on someone to ask them to be a godparent, and I shouldn't have asked her knowing that she isn't fit to be a parent, let alone to bring up a child who has no father or mother. The only reason I initially chose her was out of some misguided family loyalty. I felt as if godparents should be family members, and I wanted to give Jin a display of trust, but I don't trust her. If it was just a title, sure, I'd let her call herself whatever she wanted, but this is a serious position. I was sure that she'd step up, and I know that she could get a decent job with her degree if she really wanted to. So I thought it was a no-brainer to choose her, but the selfish way she responded absolutely changed my mind. I'm actually glad that I found out this early where exactly her loyalty lies. It would be terrible to die thinking that my daughter was being taken care of, when in reality her aunt wanted nothing to do with her. I've decided to choose my best friend, Lily, to be the godmother instead. She is already having kids of her own, and she has a stable job as a pediatrician. She has a steady marriage, and her husband's a lawyer. None of this is the reason I chose her, though. She's always been kind to me, and had my back to no matter what the situation was. And that kind of loyalty doesn't come from shared DNA. It comes from the heart. When my husband passed, she stayed with me for 3 weeks, barely leaving my side the entire time. I'm pretty sure she wasted every single day off that she had for the year just to sit beside me and hold my hand while Jin was shopping. I've already asked her and she said yes. There was some crying and some laughing and no mention of the trust fund, even though she knows the exact amount in it, and Jin does not. That was how I knew that I'd be making the right decision. She's genuinely happy and honored that I asked her, and isn't looking for an incentive or a reward. I'll be telling Jin my decision tomorrow, and I don't anticipate it going well. I've asked Lily to come with me while I do it. And Jin's never been violent before, but the look on her face scared me. And we haven't said one word to each other since. We're going to have lunch at a cafe in the city, and I'm going to break the news there. Lily thought that it might be a good idea to break the news in a public space so that she could not have a tantrum, even if she was so inclined. It made me feel guilty that I felt the need to manage her and her emotions, but I've spent my life catering to her and shrinking into corners while she stood up, taking up all the space in our parents' hearts. And I'm not going to allow her to do the same to my child. My mom has always used to say that becoming a mother changes people, and that you never really understand a love a mother has until her firstborn, until you're pregnant. I never really understood what she meant, but now I do. I won't let anyone try to take my baby and get away with it, and I'm going to give her the very best start in life that I possibly can. I've been thinking, and I'm considering kicking Jin out regardless of her paying rent or not. Whenever she's home, the atmosphere of the entire house changes into something that I don't really like. It's not a healthy house to raise a baby in, and I'm going to think about it some more and talk to Lily about it. But at this point, I'm pretty close to just dumping her stuff out onto the streets. It all kinda depends on her reaction to the news tomorrow. Update number 2. The conversation went about as well as one could expect. Jin started ranting and raving, but she kept her voice quiet. Even she knows how to act in a public place. I'm so glad that Lily agreed to come with me. It took everything in me not to back down when Jin started throwing insults, but I stayed firm. And Lil fielded a lot of the barraging for me. I told Jin that she was 1 week to get her stuff out of my house or I'd be calling the police. Yeah, it's harsh, I know, but she needs an ultimatum or she won't think I'm being serious. I've made empty threats before and she knows it, and I've considered booking a room in a hotel for the week, so that I wouldn't have to be there with her while she moved out, but decided against it. I won't be in fear of my own home, and I won't be scared of my own sister. Also, I know for a fact she's going to try to take some things that aren't hers, and I plan to vet every item she removes from the place. I am slightly worried about her. She has no life skills, and the only time she's ever lived independently was when she was in college getting her degree. And then she was being bankrolled by our parents, so she didn't have to worry about bills or groceries or money. I'm worried that she doesn't know how to take care of herself. For the past 4 years, I've been reminding her how to shower, reminding her to brush her hair, giving her advice, and telling her when to eat. I sometimes think that I may have crippled her in a way by feeling so beholden to her. But I've done some research. There are so many jobs available in our state that require her exact level of education, and they're all really well paying. There are so many apartments for rent, and while she probably won't be able to afford to live alone, I think that might actually be good for her. She'll at least have to learn how to do dishes. The ride back home was icy, to say the least. Lily had driven separately, so it was just me, Jin, and the poor Uber driver who had to try to take me making small talk with the both of us seething in the back seat. I refused to be the one to break the stalemate, though, and once we got home, the both of us went to our rooms. I went down about an hour ago and made some food, but I haven't heard a single stir from her room since she closed the door, and that was about 6 hours ago. I considered knocking, but again, she probably expects me to, and that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. I'm not going to fall victim to anyone's expectation but my own, or my daughter's. What's up guys, Mr. Edito here. So before the next update, I'm just going to tell you this piece of context. OP did not post for a long time. People in the comment sections were wondering what the heck happened between the sister and OP. So OP decided one day to log in and make update number 3. It's been such a long time since I've logged in, and I finally get a minute to myself and see people have been waiting for an update for months. First, I want to apologize for leaving you all in suspense. A few days after my last update, I went into premature labor and had to be rushed to the hospital. It was crazy. I was out shopping for a pushchair with Lily, and suddenly there was this rush of water between my legs. It was the scariest thing that I've ever experienced. If Lily hadn't been there, I have no idea what I would have done because I froze. She was on the ball. She called an ambulance, and once I got to the hospital, there was no time for an epidural. My girl was coming fast. Unfortunately, the doctors discovered that the umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck and restricted her airflow. Thankfully, they managed to get her out safely and she was almost blue. But they cut the cord and she started crying immediately. Unfortunately, I was in pretty bad shape. I started hemorrhaging a lot of blood. Like buckets. 1 minute I was holding my daughter and the next I was flat out of it. All I could hear was the doctors yelling for help, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up in a new room, groggy and confused. They had to bring me in for emergency surgery, but thankfully it had gone well. I'd never previously had surgery before, and it was terrifying knowing that, while I was unaware, they'd been cutting into me. When I woke up, all I wanted was my daughter. Thankfully, Lily had been with her throughout all of it. I don't know what I would do without her. She's really just been a rock through my life for everything. I had to stay in the hospital for a week after I gave birth, and I felt a lot better. But the doctors wanted to monitor my condition. Apparently, I was prone to a lot of complications. Finally, I got to take my daughter home, and she's 2 months old now. And I love her more than I could have ever expected. Lily's here almost every day that she isn't working, and her husband comes to check on me too pretty often. He's amazing, considering that I'm his wife's friend and not his. He's been helping with work around the house, and he built the crib while I was still in the hospital, so that I'd be ready for me by the time I got home. I was going to co-sleep, but the Lils has been being a pediatrician quickly changed my mind. Her christening is next Thursday, and then Lily will become officially her godmother. She's already been better to me than my girl, than anyone but my husband has been. And I couldn't think of a better person to take care of my daughter should anything happen to me. I haven't heard much from Jen since I gave birth. Obviously, I've been crazy busy, and I wouldn't have time to meet for coffee or anything. But I expected her to at least visit. She was almost completely moved out by the time my water broke, and when I was able to leave the hospital, she was already gone. I heard that she checked herself into a hotel until she'd be able to find an apartment. She texted me once while I was in the hospital and twice since I've been home, but I only gave her pretty short replies. I'm too busy of a mom to waste any more of my time with her drama. Other than that, things have been going pretty well. My recovery was speedy and the baby had no further complications. Obviously, I'm exhausted. I'm lucky if she'll sleep more than 2 hours in a row, and she's pretty severely colic, but I'm just happy to have her home and safe. I'm terrified that she's going to get sick or I'm going to drop her or something like that will happen, but I'm pretty sure that's what every new mom goes through. So sorry for the lack of updates, I was just adjusting to my new life as a mom. I also apologize for the scare. I know a lot of people were worried that something had happened to me, but I've just been too exhausted to focus on anything at all. And sorry for the lack of excitement in this update. After the difficult delivery, everything's kind of been smooth sailing. Well, thanks everybody. Hey guys, Mr. Edito here. So everybody thought that was the end of it, but OP did come back to tell us a little bit about the christening and, well, a couple more details. So let's see what's happening with update number 4. The christening was a bit of a disaster. Jen showed up and caused a scene. I should have expected it, honestly, but I thought that she'd have more common sense. I was so embarrassed. When she showed up before the ceremony, I thought, okay, that's nice. She wants to meet her niece. I was willing to let her stay. I wasn't going to be mean or anything. She's still my sister. She looked a little rough, like she hadn't slept in a few days, but she's always been prone to multiple day benders when she gets stressed out. So I just thought the job hunting must have been taking a real toll on her. Before the ceremony started, she gestured me over to the side of her church. I thought that she just wanted to apologize or something, so I handed the baby to Lily and went to meet her. She smiled at me all big and bright, but it was clearly fake. She had these big dark circles, like than I do, and haven't slept in months. She asked me how I was doing, how the baby was, and then asked when she'd have to come and hold her. I was confused and asked her what she meant. She asked when the godmother had to come and hold the baby and be sworn in as a godparent. I thought that she'd lost it, but she looked calm. I tried to explain in the least confrontational way possible that I've made the decision to appoint Lily as godparent. I said that we'd already talked about this though, and she knew. Jen just rolled her eyes and said that she knew I wasn't being serious. She said that she forgave me for kicking her out and that she'd take the offer to be godmother and move back in to help with the child care. She even apologized for asking for money and said that now she'd spend some time in the real world. She understands that I need to use the baby's trust fund on her and myself. I was absolutely flabbergasted. I thought she was joking at first, but her face was completely serious. Yeah, she was delusional. I think I was a bit hard on her when I told her to leave and not contact me again. But I needed to get across the message that I did not want her in my life anymore. I don't have the time nor the desire to play her games. She did look hurt, but I didn't bother comforting her, and I just walked back to where my guests were standing. My in-laws were also there, and they decided that they didn't want to be part of the baby's life. So I was already stressed to the nines. I didn't look back at Jen and just assumed that she left. Well, the ceremony began, and once it was time for the godparents to say their piece, there was my sister, pushing her way to the front of the room and trying to wrestle my baby out of Lily's arms. I just about had a heart attack. She was being so rough with the baby, and wasn't even attempting to hold her properly. I ran towards them and tried to take her hands off the baby, but she wouldn't budge. I was whispering furiously, but she didn't say anything, just continued to pull on my daughter and recite the script she clearly Googled for a christening. Thankfully, eventually, my brother-in-law managed to pull her away. He brought her to a separate room and from there called the cops. I think it was most embarrassing I've ever been in my life, and I could feel my husband's family judging me for being white trash in their heads. Eventually, the cops came and took Jen away. I don't plan on pressing charges, but first thing tomorrow, I'm going to call a lawyer and ask about a restraining order. I'm also going to pay for the security system and the house to be upgraded. Well, that's going to conclude all the updates unless something major happens. Thanks again for all the support that you guys have given me. Thank goodness for Lily. If it wasn't for Lily, I have a feeling this story would have been so much worse for OP. Her sister was completely out of control, but at least in the end, a little bit of justice was served because she was hauled off to jail. Let me know your thoughts on this story, guys. What would you have done differently? Would you have made your sister the godmother, even though you know it probably wasn't the best choice? In my personal opinion, I think Lily was the absolute perfect candidate. But guys, I would love to know your opinion. If you don't agree, that's totally cool. Just let me know your thoughts. Drop them down in the comment section, guys. That's all the content for today. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing. It's one of the best ways to support me, and that way you won't miss out on the future videos. Guys, have an amazing day, and I'll see you tomorrow.